I think this is a big problem in education. I first noticed it when I was working at Mount Sinai, the Icon School of Medicine. I was working there, and I, one of my responsibilities were to assist the dean in the admissions process. So I was very lucky. I think that was one of the biggest eye opener for me to sit down and see how these great minds sit down and they judge other people. What is the perfect student? And so I was there just observing. And I always sat down and paid so much close attention to everything that was said. And I remember sitting there, and these are top scientists, because this is in the PhD and MD PhD programs at Mount Sinai. And, these are very brilliant people. And so I sit down and just observe. And one of the things I've noticed that at a certain point, it became very difficult for them to decide what is the perfect student. Because at a certain point, all you see is 4.0s, 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 or the SAT scores, you know, they're all crazy, crazy numbers that I don't know even if it's possible. But the numbers were all identical. And, I always wondered how are they going to differentiate between what's a perfect student and what's not. And a lot of the times it came to what were the extracurricular activities that these students were doing. Um, did they join a team? Were they the captain of a team? And that was one of the things that stuck out. The other thing too, I noticed they would also focus heavily on the student interview more so than the faculty, because then the student felt comfortable talking to another student, and the students were able to get more of a clear picture of who the student, who he or she is, and is it a perfect fit for that community. And the reason why I tell the story is because, when I looked at those grades, I was like, how is it possible? There has to be some form of grade inflation. And, I wonder how closely aligned those grades were to the learning objectives and things like that. And now looking at the current situation at FIT and how um, the student evaluation takes a big chunk. I feel it takes a big part of you as a teacher, as who you are as a teacher. That now you might become more flexible in the way you grade or the way that you allow students to submit late. And that in turn has caused for grade inflation in return of, hey, give me some good evaluation because that will affect my career as a teacher. And so we see a cycle. It's a
Right.
vicious cycle, and it just becomes toxic. And I feel that the other piece of it is now millennials, which are students who feel they are deserve an A only because they've paid for, or their parent has paid for the tuition, and they deserve an A, nothing less. And so it becomes, we lose focus of what education is. It becomes something that we're serving students. They're not earning a grade. We're giving them grade. We're giving them an A because they're entitled. And that's basically the where spec grading comes into place. It tries to bring education back to the original core. Nothing new. I'm not going to say anything that I'm saying today is revolutionary. Basically, what I'm saying, or what I'm going to propose, is that spec grading is a step forward or step back to what the original educators envisioned education to be as, you know, focused on the learning objectives. This is what they need to accomplish. Competency based education where the student has to demonstrate competency, and then therefore you assess their competency, and that's how they earn their grades, not based on other factors. And I think that's really what education originally started. It was based on those principles. Um, and I think we as educators have strayed away, and students, and we can't blame them for it because we designed the syllabus. We put together these points. We say this is worth this. This is worth 10 points. This is worth 20 points. And then as teachers we complain because they don't read the syllabus and they ask silly questions because everything I said is on the syllabus. But when a student gets the syllabus, automatically they go to the area that has the breakdown of the grades. And like how fashion magazines and Vogue, the cover, they have these hot spots. Like where does the consumer look at the cover of the magazine before deciding to buy the magazine? And this is how marketers, they use that data to analyze, hey, this is a good cover. Do we go with this cover? This, where is the eye going to? And so they have these hotspots where it tells them. So I use that the same way as a syllabus. Syllabus is, I'll tell you the hotspot is right where the breakdown is, and they don't worry about anything else because this is what I need to pass the grade with the minimal amount of effort to get the most amount of points. And that's the mindset that we have created as educators, and students have just fallen into that kind of wormhole or rabbit hole. It's become a spiraling problem, as we see with grade inflation and everything else that I mentioned. And then one of the big issues is the stress. We're noticing a lot of students that are going for mental health issues because, either I remember at Baruch when I attended, there was several students commit suicide when I was a sophomore. From my sophomore year to my senior year, there was always several students who had committed suicide. And that school was very intense, and it's a great school for business, but also very intense for that reason. It's one of the best bang for your bucks as a CUNY school. Um, so we have a lot of problems with the grading systems that are in place right now. Another problem is, like I mentioned, the students that are just focused on the grades and they don't bother to look at the why. Why am I learning this? What is the purpose? A lot of these students are not even focused on the why. Um, and one of my biggest issues is students haggling for points. And I know, probably you, Patrick, have encountered one of these students coming to you for few points, meager, is even may not make a big difference, but it shows the intensity of the value of these little, fragments of points that don't mean much. But that shows you the problem that we're encountering is that students are so focused to the point that when we were doing remote and we noticed that several courses, or I forget, the school had a new policy where students had the right to go for an S if they didn't get the proper grade.
Right.
And teachers after that were coming to me, hey Jose, I had several students who had B plus, and they were
Correct.
going with the S grade, which is
Yep.
I was
Yep.
right. You
Even
remember
with
that?
A minus, even with an
Even
A minus. Yep. They requested yes. Yep.
and so these problems are right in our face, and we tend to look the other way and continue moving forward because that's how we operate. We got to continue moving forward and ignore some of these problems. But these are problems that are right in our face. The other problem that I've noticed this semester is some teachers would confide with me and say, look, I am having a hard time giving them zeros. I'm having a very hard time giving this particular student zero. It's been 3 weeks. The student hasn't submitted any work for week one, and now we're in week 5. And there's the stress that falls on the teacher. It's a unnecessary stress because if the student were to follow the clear directions, the due date,
Right.
that you don't have to deal with this, and you don't understand how much stress that is on the teacher. And I'm sure you know, Patrick, because you're a teacher. But I'm saying for those who don't know, it's such a tremendous stress, and those people, and some teachers can't handle it that well as others. Some, again, based on your teaching philosophy and the way you teach, some teachers can be uh, uh, very strict, and others are much more lenient. And those who are much more lenient, it causes higher stress on those that are less. Those who are more lenient carries a higher stress, and those that are much more strict. And so I've noticed that observing teachers as I meet one on one, and those professors are lenient come to me, and they're like a big ball of stress, and and it's tough to see it, and I hate to see that. So it's on both ends, teachers and students with this stress. And so with spec grading, and what I will propose is to how can we solve some of these problems that I've mentioned with the current strategy, the current model that we have for grading. And so with spec grading, let me see if I can open up my
Spec is short for what in this context?
specification.
Specification, okay.
You
As
can,
in rubrics?
as in well, we're going to talk about rubrics is a big piece of it. Rubrics
Right.
is a big piece of. I'm not sure you probably heard. Have you heard of, or you have you used it, or do you know other
Yeah,
professors?
of course,
Oh yeah,
of course. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's great because I remember hearing about it early on, and then it fades away, and then you know, and then from my experience working at FIT, I haven't come across anyone using it yet that I know. Maybe there might be some, but again, I'm only looking at online faculty, so
Right.
I haven't yet encountered somebody with what I'm going to propose today. What I'm proposing, I haven't seen anyone yet. I'm not saying there might be somebody out here at FIT, but I haven't seen anything yet like that. Um, let me show you a chart of. Actually, let me explain a little bit of spec grading, then I'll show the chart. With spec grading, again, this is highly flexible based on your philosophy as a teacher. You can modify the strategy to what you feel fits your needs as a teacher and your philosophy as a teacher. But with spec grading, you get rid of the breakdown like we talked about. The breakdown is replaced completely. You don't say, okay, 20% this, 30% that, 40%, none of that. Because that, again, like we said, is part of the problem where students are, again, focused. And not only that, instructors that create a breakdown and they don't understand that they're giving 60% or 70%, they're giving big chunks, and they know that students can pass with just completing that area or that section, right away, that's a big problem because students will eyeball that and they know, oh, again, like we said, minimum amount of effort. Where do I focus my time and effort and be able just to get a passing grade? So the first thing we do with spec grading is create bundles. Bundles are highly aligned to the learning objectives in your class, right? And so the bundles can be something like, you know, you have to get an A. There's a bundle for every criteria or a level of achievement. So for an A, you have a bundle. For the B, you have a bundle. For the C, you have a bundle, and so forth and so on, right? And each bundle has different amount, obviously, amount of work, right? And so the A bundle will have what you perceive as an A student, what that A student needs to accomplish to get that A. And so an example of that can be you have to complete 20 journal entries. You have to um, have satisfactory on all 4 paper-based assignments. You have to be present for 26 of the 30 classes. You have to, what's another example? You have to facilitate, you have to at least do certain amount of class discussions at a satisfactory level. Um, and again, the B might have a little less. So instead of having the 10 blogs, you go with 7 or 8. And the C might have 7 and the D is a 6. And you decrease the number because now what you're doing is you're presenting these bundles to the students and they say, well, this is the bundle that fits me, or this is the bundle that I want to choose. It's like a choose your own adventure, and they have to choose an adventure. And what happens is that when they choose in a bundle, they take ownership. Now the ball's on their court, right? Nothing is connected to you as a teacher. The only thing that's connected to you as a teacher is it satisfactory or not satisfactory? Now this is the second part of spec grading is, with spec grading, let's say one of those 4 assignments, let's say the student did all 4 assignments, but when they hand in the first assignment, the grading process is very different. You are creating a rubric for every gradable item. And this is where the time take, this is where you are front loading the work, because these rubrics take a little bit amount of time to put together, and they have to be very clear, very straight to the point, exactly what you're looking for, because this is the guide that you're providing them. You're letting them know this is what I'm grading you on. Right? There shouldn't be any questions. If there's a question, then you have to go back in your rubric and look at why students are asking some of these questions, and that might alert you that something's wrong with your rubric, and you go back and you fine tune it. But with the rubric, the grading process gets easier. You don't have to spend a lot of time, because with the rubric, you're already looking for certain items. Not only that, but you can skim through the paper and know if this is up to par or not to par, up to par. So this is very important. The rubric or this spec grading on an assignment, you're not looking for minimal, right? No, the minimal work, because on the rubric, you decide what is it that you're looking for. So as a teacher, again, this falls on you, right? At what level is passing for you? What is considered competency for you, right? What are you looking for? This is where now you have to decide as you're creating this rubric. So that's important. But if you're more lenient type of professor, you might say, well, I'm going to ask for the minimal. But then again, it's on you. You have to decide, right? And that's based on the rubric. So that's crucial. So we have the bundles. Students choose a bundle. The grading based on rubrics. You create the rubrics. The grading goes much quicker because the rubrics themselves help you grade quicker. You're looking for certain things. If those things are there, if the student, let's say for example, one of the things in your rubrics is if you have 3 spelling errors, you're gonna, again, that's not acceptable, right? So now what happens is the student will get a satisfactory or not satisfactory, complete or not complete, whatever you want to call it, pass or fail. If the student gets a pass, the student gets full credit. And that now is a check on that bundle that student has completed. That's a check off that bundle. If the student does not submit something that is acceptable to you, just like in the workforce, your boss says, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, you're treating them like an adult. And this is what I'm asking you to do. The boss will say to you, no, this is not acceptable. Go back and redo it or whatever. This is the part where the learning happens, the revision part. So revision, now we get to the revisions. Again, very flexible based on your teaching philosophy. I'm not cornering you to decide. This is all for you to customize and make it your own. Revision is crucial in the sense that you're going to get a student. I'm going to give an example of a student who doesn't like to write. And they're going to hand in the paper and they're going to say to you, and you're going to say to them, this is not acceptable. And they're going to ask you, well, what do you want me to do? obviously you're going to say, well, the rubric is there. You got to go what the rubric is asking you. You're not meeting the criteria. And if you say to them, well, expand on this idea, they're going to write 3 or 4 sentences, and they're going to think that, okay, now, so that's where you have to be careful, because again, they're going to try to game and take advantage. So if you're going with the more strict approach, if they do not get past through the first assignment, you can give them the same assignment with a different topic, and they got to start from zero. And that's really the best for me. My opinion is the best way. But again, I'm just being open because everyone has their own opinions on how strict they want to be, and some, we all have our own opinions. But that would be the best way to go as a revision. You're allowing them to go back, redo the project, assignment, or paper. But you can tell them, okay, this is the new topic. Same. You're still looking for the same learning objectives. It's just a new topic, right? So that's one way you can do that. But revision is key. So that's what the revision part is, right? And we all know this is where a lot of the learning happens, because, and it will happen on your first assignment as you do. If you do go with spec grading, you'll see it more often in the first assignment, because as they're getting accustomed to your style and getting accustomed to spec grading, right? Because they're getting used to it, and also getting used to using rubrics. Not all students are familiar with using rubrics and seeing it as a guide to then creating the work that they need to submit. Now, we talked about competency-based, and authentic assessments for me are top of the line. When it comes to multiple choice, we know if a student doesn't know an answer to a question, they still got 25% of getting it right. And they can guess and get it right. And this is where, you're not getting an accurate assessment of the student, right? And so we have to be careful again, with multiple choice type questions. If you're looking for an accurate read of where is your student competent, and can I move them forward? And this is where the assessment part is, right? This is what the hardest thing of a teacher is, right, assessing and trying to figure out, right? Assessing the learning objectives is so hard, and figuring out how can I assess students in the most accurate way. And again, I've done workshops on authentic assessments versus multiple choice questions, and that sort of thing. So that's another topic that we can easily cover. But if you're looking for an accurate assessment of where your students are, authentic assessments are that way, where you actually give the student an opportunity to tell you what they know, and then you measure that with your measure that to the learning objective that you have placed on that rubric. We talked about rubrics. I just wanted real quick just talk about rubrics in the sense that I know some people are at FIT. I've come across some people who are really against rubrics because they feel like it corners them, and it doesn't give them the freedom to then, for you as a teacher, to then gauge the student's competency. But I do have to say there are a lot of advantages to rubrics, in the sense of also automating the process. A lot of these LMS or Blackboard and Brightspace all provide rubrics that allow you to grade, and then you check off where the level of achievement, and that will again tremendously speed up the grading. If you have a course that's have a lot of moving items, gradable items, heavily, there's a lot of things for you to keep in mind. It's too much. It could be overwhelming. Capstone courses. I'm working right now with a professor in a capstone course. When I looked at her course and I looked at the amount of gradable items, is insane. I don't even know how she keeps it all together. Rubrics, again, are a great place for that. Providing that feedback. If you do front load and put those feedbacks ahead of time, the rubric will provide those feedbacks automatically for you, for the students, as long as if you place them in a certain area, the rubric then gives them that rubric based on where you placed them as a B student, and A, whatever, you know. Um, the next, so that's on rubrics. You know, again, I'm a big believer in rubrics. They're easy to make. They do take a little bit of time, but as you get used to them, you can get better at making them. The other part into spec grading, and I'm almost finished closing up, is the another. You know, we mentioned gamifying and how we've gone in the wrong direction with points and grades. Not to say that gamifying is a bad thing. It's just in this case, gamifying has turned itself upside down and created this horrible experience where students are obsessed with these points and what grades mean to them. And along with the millennial thinking and the mindset of I deserve all this, it's just the wrong combination. But I'm not trying to say there's not a place for gamification. There is space to gamify your course, because with gamification you get motivation, you get to incentivize, you get to, unfortunately, as we all know, with students, unless you apply a grade or points to something, it's very unlikely they'll do it. So that brings it back to then, you know, the idea of incentivizing, gamifying. So that's a good thing about gamification, is that you can apply the idea of gamification into something like tokens in your course. So anything that's outside of the bundle. Remember we talked about the bundles. We got the bundle for an A, the bundle for a B, the bundle for a C, and so forth. You can actually apply gamification if, let's say the student has completed all 10 blogs or journal entries. You're rewarded a token that, in which case they can use to then drop the lowest grade, or, you know, something that you're looking to incentivize in your course. That's difficult for you to get them to do, right? If there's something that you're looking forward to, and a lot of the times incentivizing goes a long way for the little points, because they're so obsessed with points. It could be half a point, which means almost nothing, but in their eyes, they're so fixated on this idea of grades and points. So reversing that, and to use it to your advantage as a teacher, to get them to do certain things, and that's the way it is. It's like what was it, Baz, the experiment with the dog. If you gave him a snack that, you know, what was it with the, you know, I'm forgetting the story, but you get, you know, it's
yeah,
yeah, remember, yeah. So so, you know, same idea, right? So unfortunately, that's what
right.
we're humans. We work the same way, you know. So think about, you know, incentivizing and where can you incentivize. Right now, I'm working with a professor in an online course where she's having a hard time. Obviously, in an online course, we can't tell the students to show up to present because it's all asynchronous. So to get them to come and present synchronously has to be an option. So now she's struggling with, even though she knows that it will benefit them tremendously, because she is bringing experts from the field to give them expert advice and feedback. But since it's not required, it's optional, no one's going to show up. And that would be a perfect incentive to incentivize that, right? So those are some examples. I just want to give an example of situations where it might be hard for you to get them to do something that you know is beneficial to them, but they don't want to do it because there's no points attached. So that would be something that you might want to incentivize. That's pretty. I'm going to close up with my graph. I want to share the screen and I'll show this graph because I think it kind of it visualizes what I just talked about here. And let me share this chart because I think it's brings it all into perspective. Um, and so this will be an example of you know, spec grade using spec grading in the class, right? So here, like I said, this is the A student. This would be the B bundle, the C bundle, right? And for us to create these to create the bundle, you have to start with the learning objectives, and then from the learning objectives, then create the assignments, and then once you have the assignments in place, and remember, you have to think about how many you're going to do for the whole semester. So this is why the front loading happens. You have to know, well, I'm going to have 10 blogs for the whole semester. I'm going to have, you know, 4 papers, right? I'm going to have this amount of work. And again, that's where you have to align the assignments to the learning objectives. And then this is where then the bundles come. So in order is first come up with the learning objectives. From the learning objectives, then you create the assignments. From the assignments, you build it out for the whole semester, or you think about how many you want to have. You don't have to build. You don't have to create. You don't have to create all the assignments, but at least you have to know how many you're going to have for the whole semester, because then that's going to then become the bundle, right?
Right.
So that's so then once you have the bundle and you created a bundle for each letter grade, then this is what you put in the syllabus. You don't put the breakdown, right? Oh, 30% for assignments, 20% for discussion, 10% for participation. You know, that this is replacing that breakdown.
Right.
And then the bundle is then converting spec grading back into a letter grade.
Right.
Right? So this bundle then the conversion is happening right here, because now this amount of work is then equal to then a B. So that's what the conversion process, right? So then you got to think about based on the amount of work that you have here, is that then a B?
Right.
And so that could be a little bit challenging for somebody doing this the first time. And you know, there's going to be a lot of fine tuning, a lot of fine tuning. You're not going to get it right on the first try, because you're going to realize, well, maybe I could have got a little I could have got a little more with the A and added a couple more things. And then next semester, I'll fine tune it, and I'll add a few more items that will go under the A grade, right? And it's always about tinkering and fine tuning it.
Right.
Here's another example. I just want to give you another example.
Okay.
Again, you know, here earn satisfactory on at least 20 guided assignments.
Right.
That's 12 on foundation quizzes, satisfactory on all 3 connections tests, and the portfolio, and that will give you an A for the
Right.
whole semester, right? And then it decreases as you go down to a B, right?
Right.
Now, you can also create what's called a buffer. If you say you have to complete all 20, but you have to get satisfactory on 80% of all 20 to then get an A. And that gives you a little bit more. That would be a buffer, and that's a little bit more lenient, right? Because now you're saying that you have to complete all 20, but at least 80% of those 20 quizzes has to be satisfactory.
Right. Yeah.
So again, you see, as you go down from an A to an F, and again, the student feels like they have control and ownership, because everything is clearly in their face. What do I need to get that C? If that's what you're looking for, an easy C, that's okay.
Right.
And now you
Right.
as a teacher, you don't have to carry that guilt that, oh, I let my students fail. Oh, I don't want to give them a zero. That guilt or that fear of giving that zero is no longer is less on you, is more on them.
Right. Yeah.
And that's something that I'm seeing a lot now is faculty struggling with students and creating extensions upon extensions,
Right.
and then you're now stuck with the students who are now in week 3, and you're still grading one student who is still submitting work from week 1.
Right. Yeah.
Um, there's one last thing I want to show, and I think I'm done. Where is it? Yeah, we talked about this. We talked about, oh yeah. So this is my example of a syllabus and where the students go directly
Right.
to, and then they disregard everything else. And then we as instructors, we think about, didn't they read the syllabus? And uh, and so they're focused on getting accruing the most amount of points in the least amount of time and effort. This is the last chart I wanted to share because this is the chart that kind of encapsulates all the problems,
Right.
right? The
Yep.
stress, the need to get a certain grade to then be able to graduate, and be able to get accepted for another school with a GPA of 3.0 or higher, or else if I don't get that certain GPA, I won't be able to go to get my doctorate or my. And
Right.
so that's that stress to get a grade to then move forward,
Right.
and so that fixation on then little points in general, points and accumulating those points, and then the haggling over the points, asking for extra credit. Professor, I know I missed X, Y, and Z. Can you give me a special assignment so I can get extra points?
Right.
Or professor, can you give me partial credit? And
Right.
begging and begging and begging until they pass on the stress onto you. And now the stress is no longer on them, it's now on you because you're providing new opportunities for these students who are struggling and struggling behind. And then this moves on from class to then higher ed to then a job and then
Right.
employment. It continues after higher ed,
Yeah.
focused on the transcript and the skill level. So this is the graph that I just wanted to show, just to
Right. Yeah.
explain a little bit,
Yeah. It is helpful. Yep. Yep.
to
Yeah.
visualize all these
Right.
problems and how they come together.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
it. That's all I wanted
Yep.
to
Yeah.
cover
I
on
think
this.
it's good that you are rehearsing the conversation, because it's a topic that it's badly needed, I guess.
Mhm.
And there are several challenges with this topic. One of them is that in some departments they have a grading criteria for all the courses. There isn't much flexibility, and everything is measured in percentages.
Right,
So right there, you're going to have to figure a way
right,
to uh, find a way to offer an alternative that is digestible to those departments. You know,
right. Yeah,
we have a very flexible policy in our department, but still, all the sections of the same course must have the same grading criteria.
right,
Whether you're a strict professor or a flexible professor, the criteria is the same.
right,
So that's where we see people uh, using their own personal philosophy in grading, uh, they stick to the criteria, but then they play in the way they interpret the, the,
Right.
the percentages. So that's conversation number one, I guess. And the other thing is that since we're a professional college, we don't require that our instructors have pedagogical training. They're
Right.
all professionals in their field, and they had never taken a course in pedagogy.
Right.
So which
Yeah.
is which is something so basic for in other colleges. You know,
Right.
yeah. I don't know. I think that your best shot probably is to use the idea of incentivizing and coming up with a three-session, with a certificate, so to speak, of three workshops where you break down these ideas into three separate hours, and then there's a bundle for each of them, and the person gets a certificate issued by your office that they can
Right.
claim in their promotion applications or stuff like that. You
Right.
know, because by looking at the attendance, I was curious when I saw the Tammy's email about today's topic.
Mhm.
It wasn't clear to me what spec grading is, but I was
Right.
still curious because I'm always interested in learning more about grading. But I see that I'm the only one who made it, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's another homework, I guess, to figure out how to market it better so that he
Right.
gets interest. You
Right.
know,
I think I shoot myself in the foot because all these videos are available. The recordings are always available um, asynchronously, and a lot of people prefer, I guess, watching them at their own time, or maybe they're busy. But that's another thing with the attendance. But yeah, I love the idea of creating like a certificate for that. And I understand completely what you're saying about it. I'm climbing a steep mountain. It's
right,
something that
right,
it has to be accepted at the department level.
right,
Each department has their own way of doing the way
right.
they they
Yeah,
figure it out. And they standardize it throughout the departments based on what the, if every section, like you said, has to
yeah,
then comply with whatever that
right,
department did.
right.
Um,
One thing
but
that you
yeah,
might consider is uh, offering a department chair to come to one of the meetings for 15, 20 minutes
that's interesting.
and open the discussion about how can we improve grading, and maybe from there on you can create some interest, and maybe you get one or two people in each department that can become the
That's a
the
great idea,
promoters of this idea.
right? Because it has to start from the chairperson. So that's a great idea. Yeah, I've run. These are all great ideas, Patrick. I'm going to run them by Tammy
Right.
and see
Yeah.
because
I have a class at 2:10 I
yeah,
have to
yeah,
run.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
But I'm